Hey there, Jennie.
Have you heard how we start every time?
How do we start?
Like that.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey.
Oh.
Oh, too much intensity. Oh. Good morning, Jennie. I love your braid. You're looking just delightful.
Oh, thank you.
And how's your day going?
It's great. It's sunny. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. Another beautiful summer day. August in Montana, which is where we're recording this from, is a spectacular thing. And the sun's out. The moon is full. The Perseid meteor shower is almost upon us. It is just all kinds of goodness.
Did you see the moon?
We together saw the moon.
But no, the next day.
Okay, let's talk about that. All right, but hello to you podcast audience. Thank you for joining us for a special edition of Hey, It's the Luskos.
It's a special one.
Every edition is special, but this is going to be great. We're filming this today on August. I guess any day is true that you're filming it today. It's Tuesday, August 4th, and you're listening to this presumably on Thursday, the 6th, or sometime thereafter.
Oh, right.
As these remain
in the future,
in the archive in perpetuity.
In the future, but the present.
Wow. I'm going to have to think about that. But it is an interesting week, a special week for us, of course, because we have released a one-of-a-kind resource out into the world that for our family is the 5th book product that we've released, but is the first of its kind because it is the first that is meant to be more of a devotional, more of a project that you are undertaking to work on yourself. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But because it's release day and we're doing, some interviews and dedicating some energy to kind of talking about this resource, we wanted to kind of dedicate a little bit of time on today's episode to just kind of this book and this subject. And we're hoping it's going to help a lot of people. But before that, the moon. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so last night you brought attention to me that the moon was doing something unusual.
Which is rare because normally you are the one that says, hey, look at the moon. Well, hey, I have my binoculars. Well, look at the moon.
2 days. Hey, I have my binoculars. Look at the moon. Hey, I've got one eye. Look at me. But we've been... I
wonder how binoculars work when your one eye doesn't work.
Well, I would probably just have to use it as a monocular. So last night was the second night of the full moon, I believe. I think the first day it was full was 2 days ago. But last night they were calling this moon, what was it, a sturgeon
moon?
Or a blueberry moon?
Or a green corn moon.
Or a all things ripen moon, according to the Farmer's Almanac. They give different moons different names based on seasons. And this particular moon, because it's in August, is now a moon under which it's summer and fishermen are out fishing under its light in warm climates. Farmers of blueberries are seeing their blueberries ripen. We have been we've been huckleberry picking.
Very different, but similar.
They are ripe. And man, we were finding huckleberries as big as large blueberries, as big as small grapes. So, this moon does have secret powers. It's obviously causing everything to ripen. For those of you listening who have never been huckleberry picking, we should talk to you about that for a minute.
Gosh, it's really hard to describe. There's nothing quite like it. I mean, I guess I've never been like raspberry picking or blueberry picking, but so I don't know. I can't compare.
We had raspberries growing in one of my houses growing up, so I did do that. It was not nearly as fun.
Okay.
Well, because raspberries can be domesticated. Blueberries can be domesticated.
You can have them in your front yard in the city.
Put them in your garden.
But huckleberries...
Put them in your herb garden. Put them in your herb garden. Whatever you want to do.
But huckleberries cannot be domesticated.
They are a wild animal.
Literally.
Wild creature.
You cannot replant them.
You can't
They
domesticate
just grow where they grow.
They also are a species that has a real particular need for a combination of elevation, sun exposure, and shade. So they kind of need it's like the perfect Bermuda Triangle of conditions that has to be met before a huckleberry will grow. And they ripen, end of July, different, earlier in August. Depends on the kind of the heat, honestly, of the summer. Depends on how much rain we're getting. I remember one year they ripened pretty end of July. One year they weren't really ripened to early August. This year it was kind of end of July. And they just show up one day and they are like a sour taste tasting blueberry, but just
sweet,
a much
sour,
more
sweet.
refreshing, I think, fruit of any fruit.
I agree.
And people in Idaho, Colorado,
watermelon,
Wyoming, Oregon, some parts of Utah, I think, they just go nuts over them. And every chance you get, you're eating huckleberry milkshake, huckleberry ice cream, huckleberry licorice. They make huckleberry wine. It's not great. My mom bought some of it once, and I was like, that is too far. Too far. Don't be drinking rotten huckleberries. But yeah, so they put it into syrup. But we discovered a couple years back the joy of picking them, because you got to find them. You don't know when they're going to show up, and we have this trail. You have to guard your huckleberry picking patch to your death. You can't tell anybody about it, because they'll come and steal it.
People do, but you don't have to.
I mean, just saying, it's like a thing that you don't ask somebody where they picked.
Which, that is helpful to know. But for people who are like, oh, I can't tell you where I picked.
Yeah.
Like, that's silly. But if you have the etiquette to be like, oh, I won't ask where people go. But to be able to. Or
you can be vague. I went to this area, to this region. I went to this county to pick. But we found a couple places that are pretty good picking spots. But we've tried to bring people along, because there were people who helped us figure it out.
Yeah.
So when we go picking, we get milk jugs and cut off the top, so you still have the handle.
AKA water jugs. They don't previously hold milk.
That's true. We don't, because the only milk in our house is milk that comes from not cows. We have almond milk in our fridge, oat milk in our fridge. I think that's it right now. I've seen banana milk in our fridge. I've seen cashew milk in our fridge. I've seen
coconut
macadamia,
milk.
Coconut.
Yeah.
The only kind of milk we don't have is milk.
I know, because we're trying to find the right milk.
I'm just going to be honest with you.
Because Lennox is allergic to dairy.
I'm with you on not having milk in the house because of Lennox. Can I just say, when you have a bowl of cereal with any kind of milk other than milk, it just doesn't taste right.
It's true.
It's fine in cooking. It's fine in oatmeal. But when a bowl of cereal is had, the taste of milk I think the scientists that engineered the flavor of the cereal did so either intending for you to eat it dry, which is fine if you have given up hope, on the couch eating.
2 out of 5 of our kids don't like milk with their cereal.
Yeah, but when you put milk on it, I think the flavor profile is so connected to how they created it to taste that it ends up as a concoction that is not right. Now, I eat this like protein cereal called Magic Spoon. That's most mornings if I don't have time to make
Just give me the shivers.
a scramble, which is like most mornings. I eat that Magic Spoon because it's protein, no carbs. And that stuff really tastes nasty with almond milk. Like when I eat it, I'm literally thinking to myself, this is fuel. Like I have to think of it like putting the gas pump into my car. And actually, if I think that way, it helps because then I don't care about the taste. But it's not great.
No. So,
what were we talking
huckleberries.
about? Oh, so huckleberries. So we cut the top off the jugs.
Right.
And then you have the handle on your jug and you put it on your belt.
Or fanny pack.
Fanny pack,
if you
belt,
have one.
Anything would work really. Giant rubber band, whatever you can find lying around.
Right next to your bear spray. Because
you gotta bring your bear spray.
Bears love huckleberries.
Bears love huckleberries. Huckleberry.
Okay, also, Levi preached a series called Chasing Huckleberries.
4 weeks all about this fruit.
It was really good. So
it was
should go
one
and listen
of
to
the
that if you have time.
surprising delights of my preaching career. Preaching a month all about a berry.
Here's the thing about huckleberry picking. There's something soothing about it because you're out in the wild. You're not sure if you're going to find huckleberries.
Nothing is certain.
When you do find them, it's like, oh my gosh.
It's a grand adventure.
When you find a bunch of them.
Ooh, a wild, wicked patch of huckleberries.
The only downside is when you bring a dog with you who doesn't like to be in the woods and you bring your 3-year-old son with you who just wants to run up and down the trail.
He's crazy. We took Lennox huckleberry picking when he was a week old. I had him in the baby Bjorn on the front pack.
Oh, yeah, because that was when you preached that series.
We were getting B-roll for the series. The thing is, like Jennie said, they only grow in the wild, so that was 1 week. Some of the best things can't be man-made, can only be God-made. You can't domesticate or control the spiritual life. You need to just lean into it. So there's a wildness to following Jesus. I think the second week was on the fact that as the season progresses, they get sequentially ripe at higher elevations.
Yeah.
And that'll preach, right? Further up, further in, ascend the hill of the Lord, the path of the righteous is like the shining of the sun that evermore shines into the perfect day. So kind of the idea of we have to keep going further up and further in. And I think there was a week on the fact that huckleberries often grow really well in areas that have had in the past a wildfire. And so it's been burning, but now out of the ashes of the defeat of the fire now comes new bushes that grow huckleberries, right? And how in our lives, oftentimes after fire, ravages our life through trial or pain or difficulty, some of the best things grow because the ashes become fertilizer for next year's crop.
Oh, man.
So it's easy to look at a fire and go, really it's the worst. But it's like, actually, it could maybe be the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And then the last week was the fact that when you're chasing huckleberries, are you ready?
Yes.
You're not the only one out there chasing them. Bears are too. Bears love huckleberries. Bears love beets, bears, and Battlestar Galactica. That's what they love. That's an Office reference. Okay, so bears love huckleberries, so you have to always be aware that you're hunting this, but something else is too. And of course, the parallel in our spiritual life is that we have an enemy who is also, after some of the same things, which is our resource, our intelligence, our passion, our worship. So that was the series.
And these past couple times we've been out, what I have gleaned from huckleberry picking is comparing it to reading God's word, because there were bushes, like as we were walking, there were bushes that had them, but we couldn't see them because usually the huckleberries grow underneath the leaves. So if you look above, you won't see any. You have to look below. And so,
whoa, are you saying you can't get the treasure you're after standing upright? You got to bow down low to get them?
Yes.
If that don't preach.
So,
week 5, chasing huckleberries. Next time I do the
4
series.
4 years later.
Fifth. I've got a 5th installment. Everybody.
Just randomly.
Hold the press.
You don't even say it. You're just like, oh, this is week 5.
Hey everybody, welcome to week 5 of our series, Chasing Huckleberries. People are like, wait, what?
No, but then
actually,
the other thing.
People tell me that that series stood out to them. Like I've preached 30 books of the Bible I've gone through,
so
deep Greek,
series.
Romans, blah, blah, blah. No, people are like, man, that Chasing Huckleberry series was the jam. Get it? Oh my gosh. Get it? Because they make huckleberry jam?
Okay, that's great. So, but the other thing was, like, comparing it to reading the word, like if you just kind of glance at a Bible verse in the morning, which is good, no matter what. Yeah. But if you just kind of look at it and then go on with your day, that's kind of like looking at a huckleberry bush, maybe seeing one huckleberry, grabbing it, eating it, going on your way.
Yeah.
But
which is cool. If you're hiking, you see it, you grab it, bang.
Yeah. If you're not specifically huckleberry picking, then it's like you get an added bonus to your hike. However, when you can kind of just sit and linger, like you said, get low, because you kind of have to get low and look up and see the berries hanging. If you can kind of just sit and stare and see, and you're sitting there, and honestly, you'll get some, but then there's more. Like more come into view, and you see the next bush next to it, and you're like, oh my gosh! And then all of a sudden,
the longer you sit there, the more you see.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, your little water jug is full of huckleberries, and you just sat in one spot.
Great.
And so that was something we were telling our kids of, like, that's when you receive God's word, just lingering for a little bit and sitting, because the more you stare, the more you see, and the more you see who Jesus is and who God is and who you are in Christ, and it's so beautiful.
That's
when you
wonderful.
Can just sit and linger.
And truly, like you're saying, like you the temptation is to kind of like flip from bush to bush, like, oh, that one's got more, because you'll be like picking, like, I think I've come to the end of this one, so you go to this one. But then so many times when I've been that way, I'll be picking a new bush and I'll glance back at the bush I just left and see so many I missed.
Yeah.
And then I'm back to that one. So then I've actually just learned to like force myself just to actually sit down.
Yeah.
Get to a bush, sit down, and just really be. And there's something very soothing and calming to the soul about something so mindless and refreshing. And, this does segue to what we're going to talk about in just a little bit with this new resource we just put out. But I have found so much peace from those kind of moments, the hikes, the walks, the berry picking, and then I think also, when we go to find them, we often take hiking trails to get to where we go, but then you can't stay on the hiking trail because those bushes have been picked over. You have to get off the beaten path a little bit, get off to where it's a little more alone, a little more remote. And I think there's so many parallels to the soul and to what we're meant to. I mean, there's so many agricultural illustrations in scriptures, you know, sowing and reaping and seasons and ripening. And, you know, you can't control a bush. It's going to produce what it produces. If it got the water it needed, the sunlight it needed, the shade it needed, the fire it needed 5 years ago.
Gosh.
And our souls have to be curated and stewarded, and we have to serve the conditions that can facilitate the Holy Spirit doing the vibrant things that he wants to do in our lives.
Yeah, that's so good. Another thing, we brought a friend with us this last time, and we were talking about like how at first glance, a huckleberry bush just seems like, oh, it's just another bush. But when you kind of look a little bit and lift up the leaves, then you see the fruit there. And she was saying that, oh, it's kind of like someone who seems like they don't have a lot there, or you don't see right away their personality or who they are, who God's created them to be. But if you look a little more, and if you kind of like take the time to uncover and to seek for it, like you've preached before, it's like you've never met a normal person. You've never met an ordinary person. Every person is made in the image of God and has a gift and has a talent and has things God put deep inside them to come out. Yes. And so that was a cool even thing of just thinking, gosh,
well, and I think for us, that's been such a key to our marriage, is like us taking the time to see we're both really bad at certain things. Mm-hmm. But that in and of itself is actually a strength, not a weakness. Because so oftentimes you're going to be strong in an area where I'm weak. And so we weren't, in our marriage, we were both given everything we need to succeed as a couple. Yeah. I just wasn't given it all, and neither were you. But if we take the time to examine under the leaves, to examine what's not just there at the curb, but to actually get into each other's lives more enough to see what we have to offer.
Well, and to see, like we learned in that Tim Keller devotional, like to remember that that we're looking at an unfinished creation, in the sense that in heaven we're going to see the perfect version of ourselves, and you underlined it when we were reading it separately together, but that was beautiful. Such a game changer.
And then the last huckleberry, I promise, illustration is the fact that you're putting one berry into a gallon-sized bucket. And when you drop that first one in, you almost think to yourself, oh my gosh, this is going to take forever.
I should just eat it.
Wow, this is just ridiculous. You know, even like you walk, like I remember the first time we went in, like actually years ago when we went for the first time, we struck out several days in a row trying.
Didn't find any.
But we kept going.
Or we found some dried up.
And then eventually we found, great. And actually, when we went 2 days ago, it was the best huckleberry picking we ever had stumbled into. Mm-hmm. They were massive and we hit the jackpot on that. They were ripe. It was amazing. And we walked out with so many. We, made an apple huckleberry crisp that night with apples picked from our own apple trees. And
that's pretty good.
Huckleberries, you put it in the cast iron and put it in the oven. And we were...
I wish it was like a homemade oats, but...
We were watching a classic movie with our kids, A League of Their Own, Tom Hanks, Madonna. Mm-hmm. What's that girl's name, the star? Gina Davis.
Gina Davis. Rosie O'Donnell.
Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. She's like the girl from Boston.
Oh man, what a movie.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying Roseanne. I was like, wait, why does that not sit right? I don't think Roseanne was in that movie. Roseanne. Yeah, it was Rosie O'Donnell. That was like we've been like exposing our kids to movies from childhood. Last night I showed the kids Uncle Buck, which may or may not have been a bad choice. But
Mighty Ducks.
Mighty Ducks.
That was a good one.
Uncle Buck's amazing. It was 1 year before Home Alone. It was the first time Macaulay Culkin and John Candy acted together. And it was a tremendous movie, but it was so much more swearing than I remembered. And like every time, like Clover would just look at me like out of betrayal. She's like the buzzer of my conscience. Like, Dad, what are you doing? But it is such a great movie.
That's how a lot of those movies are, though.
Yeah, you think in your mind like, oh, that's a great movie, and then you watch it with your kids. You're like, oh, that's not quite like I remember it. Man, John Candy.
Hopefully it won't be quite like they remember
But I wanted to show it to him because of Cool Runnings. We had watched Cool Runnings, and they loved. And John Candy.
That was like one of my most favorite movies.
He's an amazing man, that John Candy. I mean, I don't know him. I told the girls, like, wouldn't you want to give a hug to him? Get a hug from him? I feel like he would give a really good hug.
Yeah, you think so.
You would think so. I mean, the circumstances would need to be right. You wouldn't want him to be sweaty, shirtless. I'm just saying, like, under ideal conditions, I think he would give a great warming hug. Let's say it was cold out. You had a bummer day, like you lost your kite or something. And then here he comes. And he's like, I'm here to comfort you. I am John Candy. Step into my arms.
Oh, my word. Okay, so you're talking about huckleberries and one at a time.
Oh, yeah, right. So then, you keep picking, and pretty soon your bucket's full. And I just think in life, it's so easy to get discouraged by the immensity of any project and forget that, if you just keep dropping a berry in there, it's going to eventually fill up. And
keep picking.
Just keep picking. And before you know it, you're like, gosh, we have so many berries. What am I going to do with all these berries?
Okay,
we freeze them.
We freeze them.
Then we pull them out. Like in the winter, we'll be able to make huckleberry pancakes in December because of what we did in July. That'll preach.
Yeah.
Did you lay up for yourself, in summer, what you need in winter?
Yes.
I think I came across a statistic about how many NFL and NBA players are broke, within 5 years of leaving the league because they weren't realizing that high earning power in their 20s was not going to stay through their 50s. They now are getting the resource they need to have down the road. And I think the Bible does say so clearly, like, consider the ant. The ant lays up in summer what it needs for winter. And I think all of us need to always be aware of the coming season of if you're a parent, do you have life insurance? Are your kids going to, not have what they need after you're, in heaven? Just all those little things that we can do to steward well and to be wise. Put the huckleberries in the freezer. If you need huckleberries, when you need huckleberries in December, you can't go pick them. You need to do that in July.
Yes.
So what are you doing now that's going to thank you down the road? And I think for those of you listening, this has a broader application than just savings and get out of debt and have life insurance and, blah, blah, blah. But also even just like, hey, when this life ends, have we laid up treasure in heaven?
Yes.
Or has all of our resource gone to this world? Because, we're going to only be able to keep forever what we gave to Jesus, and put into his hands through helping people, through, giving to nonprofits, through giving to our local churches. I think all those things are really important.
Yeah. So taking back your huckleberries.
Take back your huckleberries. Yeah. So today we released as a family.
I'm holding it right now in my hands, and it's
I wish you could see
so
it.
Beautiful. It's black with white words.
Okay.
And Levi's name is in it like a teal, turquoisey color with a lightning bolt.
Come on.
And it is just, honestly, I started reading it today, and I'm on day 1, and it is so good. And I am really thankful that you wrote this.
Oh, man, that's great. So basically this resource, this project is, how many pages is it? Go to the end.
Well, it's a 40-day devotional. There are technically 300 pages, but
it's big, and don't let that intimidate you. The cool thing about this is that it's meant to be read like a devotional. Like you would read this one day a week for 40 days, but then there's also an introduction that sets things up. 282 words. I mean, you don't include the acknowledgments? Jeez.
Okay.
You get thanked.
284.
You get thanked in there. What about the end notes? A lot of end notes.
A lot of end notes.
Yeah, I always in my books give end notes so that you can read the books that helped inspire the thoughts. And I think, how many pages of end notes are there? There's lots of them.
Yeah, 4.
Because people are always asking me what books I read.
10.
So I always include, of course, not only because it's like for legal reasons, but also so that I love the thought that people could read more about the Panama Canal by looking to see what book helped me to understand that, which is a big part of setting up the introduction. I won't spoil it for you, but it's in there. And then I also want to point out that there's no footnotes cluttering up the page. So we work hard to create endnotes that are seamless. So while you're reading them, your eyesight isn't tripping up on number 2, B, and wondering what that is. But after the fact, you can go back and all the endnotes are there. But that, believe it or not, is not easy because it takes a different kind of processing that when we first wanted to do it, our publisher did not have the capability of doing because they had just never done it before. But I had read a book where it was done in, and I was like, well, we got to figure this out.
Yeah, no, it's so fun. It's so great. It's, it's just helpful, I think. And I love that it's 40 days because it's not, I mean, I think 21 days is the thing of leads to a habit or something. It's
fine. I mean, if you don't really want to change, do 21, it's fine.
But 40 days. I mean, okay, whoa. I've heard 21-day fast when we've done Daniel fast is amazing. And every time I've done it is awesome. But then someone was telling me about a 40-day fast. And I'm like, whoa, I don't even know if I could do that.
Yeah. Well, Jesus did it.
Well, I know, but he did no food.
Right. I'm not recommending it. You got to consult your medical doctor.
Yes.
Look.
But 40 days.
Well, in the Bible, 40 is a number that's synonymous with testing. And so many times, in Scripture, people are tested for 40 days. 40 years of testing in the wilderness. 40 days, David, I give them all. There's a part in the beginning where I give literally every time 40 shows up in a significant way in Scripture.
That's cool.
And it's almost always testing. And I think it's really interesting that here we are in 2020, and if you add 20 to 20, you get 40. And it's a year of testing.
Wow.
And this year has been a year that's tested many.
Yeah,
and we're being tested. That anytime God allows hard times in our life, it's a test. This is a test. This is only a test. Don't stress. It's a test. It's a test for him to prove his work inside of us.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for us to rise up in faith. So I really believe that God is calling us to pass this test and to not falter and to not, this is not a time for our knees to go wobbly, right? Like Margaret Thatcher said to Ronald Reagan, this is a time for us to be strong and to be courageous and to remember that the Lord our God is good and he is faithful and he's with us. So I'm hoping this book is going to help people. It helped me to go through and put together the scriptures, and we put in everyday questions you can ask yourself and prayers to pray. And what I really hope people will do is not rush through it. I hope that, thinking about what life could look like 40 days from now, how much we could be different, how much we could change, what areas of our dysfunction or of a setback or trauma that we face have we not let heal properly? What's a relationship that we would love to see grow? And I think if we all kind of take something in our hearts and set it out there and say, okay, 40 days from now, God, I want to be different in some way.
Wow.
And then not to rush through it. To read it, it's not intimidating. Each day you'll be reading, 3 or 4 pages, and we laid it out to where it would look beautiful on a coffee table. It's got a ribbon. You can keep track of your day. And I think this is a really great thing for new believers.
Yes. For
someone who is, not ready to read a book like cover to cover, but, hey, a bite-sized thing each day I could do.
Yeah.
And then we wanted there to be in the margin space. So the application sections are called Breathe, Think, and Live. Because I want people to read the verse for sure, but then stop and just breathe for a second. Breathe deep.
So helpful.
To calm yourself, to quiet yourself, to make sure you sit there and take an inventory, take stock. Think about what's holding you back. Pray. Let that moment be just spiritual. And then there's places to just jot, scribble stuff, underline stuff. I want this thing to look, just beat up by the end so that you've got it as like a kind of a, I don't know, like a war-torn, battle notes that you've kind of got from this time that you can carry into the future. And every time you see it and look through it, you remember and smile and you think back about the growth that you saw.
Yeah. Well, and I like you also did curriculum to kind of not go exactly along with this book, but it does have the theme and everything. What is the curriculum you did?
So alongside the Take Back Your Life book and all this that we're talking about, you can get more information, and that is at levilusko.com. But we also put together, my publisher, W Publishing, which is part of HarperCollins Christian Publishing, they put together a small group curriculum. I was struggling for the word there for a second. I was like, it's a group of people. It's not big. It's a small group curriculum. This would be so if you, in addition to you reading through this by yourself, wanted to get together with a group of people and study it deeper.
Yeah.
And this then has fill in the blanks and has more involved questions and verses you're to look up. And it's meant to be a companion. So there's overlap, but there's differences. There's different things brought up in the small group curriculum. And then there's video Bible studies that I filmed so that you could, with your small group once a week, watch the video And then it's like 15-minute teachings, and they're beautiful.
They're so cool.
We filmed them at this cabin up in Montana in the winter, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
Actually, it was so dangerous because it was icy as heck. Getting up that road every day, we were falling all over the place and walking through snow up to like our thighs.
My gosh.
I started a fire with my bare hands. They're like, "We want you to start a fire for this one." And I was like, "Got it." And they're like, "We have a lighter." I was like, "Oh yeah, get out of here." I got my flint and steel out of my car and started it like a man would.
Yeah.
Like a man would start a fire, or a woman. Anybody really that needs to start a fire, and you just like scrape it against it. That's like my greatest.
Amazing.
It's my greatest claim to fame.
No, you are really good at that.
But so that's the video, small group. So then you could, go through the curriculum with your small group, maybe in the fall. I think a lot of people, as September comes around, school starts, maybe, I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Maybe school starts up. All the moms are like, oh boy.
I know.
And the dads. And then the book, you'll go through it anyhow. So I just think it's going to be great.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this. And I just imagine like what this in the life of someone who's ready and willing and wanting to take it slow and to take those breathe, think, live moments and to allow God to speak to them and do a deep work in their heart. I'm really, really excited about this.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. And it's neat because I love coffees that are blends. Like, I think it's cool. Like when you see a blend, it's like, oh, we mixed a little bit of Ethiopian with some Sumatran or whatever. They would blend it together to get different notes. Mm. And this particular project blends together truth on how to deal with external circumstances, but also inner setbacks, inner difficulties. So, for example, I talk a lot about grief in there. Of course, we've gone through grief, and you and I both have released books all on how to find hope in grief. Mm-hmm. Eyes of a Lion and Fight to Flourish cover those extensively. But then this book also marries other truths that I've written on how to deal with inner difficulties, like trouble self-managing, an addiction, or perhaps some anxiousness or some of those thought difficulties that you have. So I feel like what's neat about this as it's come together is that new notes come out. Yeah. Because, if you take that, I know we made fun of huckleberry wine a moment ago, but if you take a wine that's a blend and you have, notes from a South African blended with a, Australian wine. I don't even know if they do that. Maybe those countries do not mix their wine together. They're like, no, under no circumstances are our wines to be mixed. Like, I don't even know. I'm just like that guy, like using a reference, but I'm so out of my depth even trying. Like, there's probably a sommelier on here who's going, oh, they never do that. Like judging my ability to compare truth to wine. Oh, anyhow, I'm trying to say different notes come out when things get blended together, which is why you might, eat cheese with espresso. Like, it's like the palate hits it differently. And what's crazy to me is I've written a lot and talked a lot over the years about grief. And I've actually talked a good bit now about emotional intelligence and self-leadership. But with those two things mixed together, it's been interesting what's come out. And I think it's because a lot of us, the reasons that we need to self-manage better is oftentimes because of the hard things we've been through.
Totally.
And for some of us, our numbing tendencies or tendencies to medicate, self-medicate, maybe perhaps when you're feeling anxious, you tend to go spend money or tend to look to, getting intoxicated as a way of just taking the edge off of the stress or difficulty you're having coping, comes from and stems from maybe, back in your past, some trauma you faced.
Right.
So it's interesting. I think there's a connection there on grief on the one hand, and then, needing to win the war within on the other. Well,
and I mean, I've read your books and I love them.
Thank you.
But I also I feel like there's always so much packed in. I mean, I feel like that's how every one of your messages is too. Like, there's always so much. And I don't think it's ever a bad thing to review and to have, Jesus repeated himself like all the time. you've said it's a sign of a good teacher.
Well, when you think about like the 4 Gospels, you'll read them all. How many times are you going to read about the feeding of the 5,000?
Right.
The answer is 4.
Yeah.
Matthew talks about it. Mark talks about it. Luke talks about it. John talks about it.
Yeah. And I personally, I love repetition, and but that's not even necessarily, it's not like, oh, this is like when you talked about it in the book, but it's just a beautiful blend. And I love that you said it. It's a blending of so much, because it's even things that didn't even make it into some of the books, and there's stories and just these truths. And so it's like, it's a baby.
Well, the interesting thing is, the joke is that Through the Eyes of a Lion and I Declare War had a baby, and the baby is Take Back Your Life. But we don't want to tell Swipe Right, because he will not be happy about that, right? It's like, y'all are married. What are you doing? If you're just listening to this podcast, I wrote a book about God's plans for relationships, and it's called Swipe Right. So that's the joke.
Which is also very
It makes
good.
me laugh to think of Swipe Right like getting mad, like trying to be like the Holy Spirit.
But I think it's also because he feels left out.
Maybe he wanted to get invited. I don't know. That's weird too. So what? It's like, you guys having fun without me? All right. So
Wow.
What I was trying to say was, we took some of the most loved, my most favorite teachings that I've used before, concepts. And honestly, it's funny. It's like, you think, oh, I've read that before. It's like, I wrote them, and I'll read this stuff and I'm like, gosh, that hit me in a new way. Because we're always changing, and we're always growing, and we're always, maybe even, struggling with something we didn't know was going to be an issue back then. So like we read it, that's how you can read scriptural truth again and again and again and never get old. I'm reading Proverbs again this morning. I've read Proverbs since I was, 14.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times I've read the book of Proverbs.
Gosh.
But today, reading Proverbs, something brand new smacked me in the face.
Wow.
So we took some of our favorite teachings throughout the years and put them in here. But then we also, as I combed through the notes from when I wrote the books, and stuff that maybe didn't fit in, or stuff I realized afterwards that I really wanted to get in, we put that in. And then we also, there's some stuff that's just entirely brand new.
Yeah.
And that you've never read before. So I'm excited.
I loved the before. I mean, I think normally you call it the forward or
introduction,
prelude or something, but you call it the before, and that is amazing.
And there's an after.
And there's an
before
after.
and after. We were going to call it, there's a French way to say fin, like at the end of a foreign movie,
Oh,
it
yeah.
would say fin.
Fin.
I was going to say fin at the end, and then the beginning, whatever we had it. Anyhow, we went through a lot of different versions, but before or after I like, because the goal is transformation and hopefully looking different. And
After.
I really loved the after.
Yeah.
I wrote those all, of course, brand new, but the after was really special.
Can't wait. I'm going to wait to read it till after.
You've never read it?
I haven't read it yet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so 40 days of devotions. Hope you'll join us. We just, since this release day, wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit, and hope you'll check it out, share it, buy it for a friend, someone who's new to faith, someone who's going through difficulty. This will be
really good gift.
For years to come, a good gift. And it's hardcover, it's beautiful, it's a large sized, really cool doodles all throughout, illustrations, all done by our team here at Fresh Life. And it's amazing. I'm humbled and grateful and excited to see God use it.
Thank you for writing this.
And for those of you who have made it to the end, it's a 38-minute mark. Well done. We have a treat for you. We're going to now turn it over to me. And I'm going to read you chapter before. And then if you stick through that, you're going to hear day 1. It's a bonus episode that you'll have to go out of this one into the next one. How does that work? You just hit next, maybe?
Well, once this ends, it goes into the next one.
It's going to be a simultaneous drop on Thursday of this episode of us talking here, and then also the bonus episode, which is the before and day 1 of 40 of Take Back Your Life, a 40-day interactive journey to thinking right so you can live right. I hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy.
Check it out.
El fin.
Get it.